Well, normally I'd say Merry Christmas, but this is probably going to go up a couple days after Christmas, so...
Merry Christmas.
So we were going to do this, we did see this movie opening weekend like I had wanted to, but when we went to do the review, we saw it at like the latest possible showtime, so we were all pretty exhausted.
It was exhausted.
So we figured rather than, you know, waiting till the next day and risking forgetting some stuff, we decided to wait a week and see it again, just so it was fresh in our minds, and we could talk about it in more detail. Unfortunately, Anne, my girlfriend, couldn't make it. She did see it with us and she did really love it, but she wasn't able to make the review, so we love you, babe.
You're missed, but I am wearing a piece of you.
Exactly. So hey guys, JamesMCD Reviews here. I'm here with my mom, and for the second time now, we have just seen Spider-Man No Way Home.
Woo!
And before we even go any further, I'm gonna issue a huge, big-time spoiler warning. Chances are that you have either already seen this movie or have already had it spoiled for you thanks to some jackoffs on the internet or the YouTube algorithm. Thanks for that. If you somehow have gone this long without being spoiled, don't let us be the one to ruin it for you. This is something that needs to be...
Go see this movie in theaters.
Yeah.
I swear you will not be disappointed.
This is something that needs to be experienced in a theater. Like, normally I would advocate for being a little bit more responsible, but this is one of the few times where I'm like, vaccination status aside, go see this movie. Like, this is something that you need to see in the theater at least once, possibly even twice. So yeah, spoilers ahead. We're gonna try to keep it light at first, just talking about the general plot, and then we're gonna go into some more details a little later. So first off, just general reactions. What did you think of it?
It was amazing. See what I did?
I see what you did there.
See what I did? Yes.
Yeah.
But I loved it. I can't even find words to describe how much I love this movie. It was so good. I would go see it again and again and again. I mean,
what was sort of your history with Spider-Man before this movie?
So I have seen the first two Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans when they came out. I didn't see the third one. I've never
You weren't missing much.
I've never seen any of the Amazing Spider-Man movies because I just really wasn't into superhero movies. But I really liked the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. You know, the upside down kiss was epic.
Yeah.
And iconic, and you know, that was awesome. But I really am enjoying Tom Holland as Spider-Man. For some reason, he brings something to it that like Tobey Maguire didn't. And I understand that, you know, even in those he was supposed to be a teenager, but Tom Holland he has that youthful, he's believable as a high school student.
I have seen pretty much just about every like theatrically released Spider-Man movie that has come out. I watched all three Tobey Maguire movies for the bucket list video I did a while back. I think I was like 12 or 13 when the Andrew Garfield movies were out, and obviously, like you were saying, Tom Holland has been absolutely killing it in the MCU for the past like 5 or so years. It's crazy that it's already been that long, but he has just captured something about Peter Parker that the other two really haven't. And I honestly think, like, not only is this his best performance by a long shot, I think second only to Into the Spider-Verse, because that for me is the gold standard when it comes to Spider-Man, this is probably the best live-action Spider-Man movie that we have gotten. I think if you were ever at one point a Spider-Man fan, this is definitely a love letter. There was clearly a lot of time and respect put into it. It's funny when it needs to be, it's really emotional when it needs to be. It's got a lot of...
I was in tears.
It's got a lot of callbacks, but they don't feel like super like forced and pandering. It's not like super nostalgia baity like some of the other like fucking Space Jam 2 or something. It's not just here's a reference that you remember. It's actually like, you know, it serves a purpose to the story. And it's just overall I just found it to be like one of the best like in the like phase 4 Marvel movies. The plot, if you guys have been following the trailers, it centers around It picks up right after where Far From Home left off. Peter Parker's identity has just been revealed after, Mysterio broadcasts it to the world, and now the whole world thinks that Peter Parker murdered Mysterio. And it kind of, the first half of the movie kind of shows what it's like to be Tom Holland, basically, with like people constantly obsessing over him, and people like, it even kind of like tackles a little bit of like cancel culture, of like people split between an issue of did he actually kill Mysterio, or was he a hero, and shit like that. And I did really like sort of the extent to which they showed that, where like, people are throwing bricks through his window, and like there's like people following him all the time, and like people are like recording him in the hallways, and they have to move house and everything. I really like that they showed just how fucking insane people can get when they get behind something. What did you think of that?
I thought it was really relevant the way they portray, the good versus the hero. Did he do it? Did he not? And it shows how the media can spin something,
right.
Which I think is really relevant today, because the media has that power to influence and portray something in a certain way, and the public just eats it up, and we saw a lot of that in this movie.
Yeah, because you've got like J. Jonah Jameson, which is fucking amazing to see him back in this movie. I'm so glad he had like a more prominent role, but you see him constantly like chasing Peter around, looking for the next scoop, looking for something to incriminate him, and like all this like tragedy unfolds a little later on, and the public doesn't really care. Like, they're just watching this fucking circus play out in front of them, and it's kind of insane. I'm more than willing to bet that like current events influence the writing of this script.
I have no doubt. And it's like it was almost like in the movie, the public needed the villain, and the media portrayed Spider-Man, Peter Parker, as the villain in this movie.
One of the things I was hoping for in this movie was to see Peter Parker go through some actual like consequences, because the last two Spider-Man movies have been like fun sort of teen romps, kind of like reminiscent of like John Hughes sort of like teen comedies, but like they've been really low stakes, and Peter Parker, like many people have said this, Peter Parker hasn't really faced any serious consequences for anything yet. And this one, he is constantly dealing with the ramifications of his actions throughout. Like, the people around him are still suffering. When he eventually goes to Doctor Strange to have him like make everyone forget that he was Spider-Man, which I love that line, by the way, of like, you didn't even think to call them first before you had me brainwash the entire population. He does something that major, and then that is what causes all the villains to come through and all this destruction and everything. And it's even later on when he tries to do what he thinks is do the right thing and try to like stop them from becoming the villains, and he suffers the consequences of that as well. Like, I think this is, in terms of drama, this is probably the one of the darkest Spider-Man movies that we've gotten, and I really love that they showed like Peter going through actual like consequences and like suffering.
Oh yeah, it was heartbreaking watching some of those scenes.
Right.
Now, any of you guys have seen my MCU binge watch review will know that I did not really care much for the Doctor Strange movie, but I really do like Doctor Strange as a character.
Yeah.
He's growing on me more and more. I like, especially in this movie, his character was, it helps that it's Benedict Cumberbatch. Yeah. But I really do like his character, in this, and I am looking forward to more of what he has to bring. But by all means, continue.
Yeah, I really liked. Not only did I like how Doctor Strange was utilized, I'm glad that that he wasn't super prominent. I'm glad that he didn't fill in like the Tony Stark role as like the father figure or the role model. Like, he was just there to get the plot moving, and
he was there basically to say, you fucked up.
Yeah, exactly.
And you need to fix this.
So obviously, as like in the trailer, the spell goes wrong. All these villains from I love how Doctor Strange says we started getting visitors from every universe, when really it's just the Sam Raimi and Mark Webb universes. And we see all these villains from the previous Spider-Man movies come through, and I've gotten mixed feelings on that. What did you think, like, seeing all the villains, like, how they were portrayed, like, their interactions off each other? Like, I know it would probably help a lot better if you had seen, like, the other movies.
I wasn't familiar really with the, those villains, the Lizard and...
Electro.
Yeah, whatever they're...
Yeah.
But I did know, the Green Goblin, and I love Willem Dafoe. He's a great actor. I've seen him in lots of other things, and I do remember him from the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, and I think the portrayal was exactly the same. There was, obviously he's aged a bit, but the creepiness, was still there.
Norman's on sabbatical, honey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Alfred Molina, that character was just iconic. But I think the kids' reaction to him was hilarious. When they're asking his name, that was just priceless.
It does, like, there are some things about it that kind of don't work. I feel like for the most part they got those characters, the villains, down really well. Mm-hmm. Willem Dafoe and Alfred Molina especially both feel like they were just plucked from their roles in 2002 and 2004. Like, Willem Dafoe is the best character in this movie, in my opinion.
Are you talking villain?
In terms of villains, but also just, like, the way that he's portrayed. Like, you wouldn't have guessed that it's been, like, 20 years since he's played this part, just from
true.
like the way that he can go from this, like, really, like, sort of timid, sort of scared old man, like, to this really just kind of sinister, like, guy is really, like, he was creepy even in the Tobey Maguire ones, even though he's got this cheesy outfit and he's saying all these corny one-liners. He was still pretty intimidating. Mm-hmm. And, like, the way that he's used in this movie is just great. Alfred Molina, again, it's just funny seeing just this grouchy old guy, like, dealing with these fucking teenagers. And I also like sort of the ending to his character of, like, they're actually able to get rid of the voices in his head, and he actually makes a turn and becomes a good guy by the end. On the second watch, I did sort of come around to Jamie Foxx's Electro. Like, they did a complete 180 of his character from Amazing Spider-Man 2, where, like, in that movie he went from, like, loving Spider-Man to then having his accident and then for some reason hating Spider-Man to, in this one, now he just wants power. Like, he's found a new universe and he can, like, draw power from it, and he's a very comic relief villain. But those main three, I think, were really well handled. But it also kind of makes me, it's very blatantly obvious that they kind of cheaped out with the other two villains. Like, they did everything in their power to make sure that, like, Sandman and Lizard were completely, like, CG. Like, the Lizard they shot completely in the dark so that they wouldn't have to try as hard with the visuals. Okay. And I did look for the credits to see if they actually got the actors back. The credits say that they do, but it also, I'm pretty sure that they just used, like, recycled footage from the other movies to, like, when they make their, like, transformations at the end. What did you think when later on in the movie, when May suggests Peter try to help the villains?
I see where she's coming from. That's just, the person that she is. Of course, they'd just send it back. We wouldn't have had a movie, so.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of the whole, that's the whole premise of the movie. So, it had to be that way. Otherwise, you wouldn't have No Way Home.
Right, exactly.
But I think that, that was the, the catalyst for everything else, and for her own death.
Yeah.
And insisting that Peter help them and not just send them back to die.
Yeah. And also speaking on, since you brought it up, what did you think? How do you think that was handled? Aunt May's death.
Tears. Tears.
Yeah, that was the second time in a Spider-Man property that I've seen them kill off Aunt May, and this one, like the first one being the PS4 game, I believe, and this one was just as heartbreaking because at first it didn't seem like she was going to die.
Right. Yeah, I was not expecting that.
Like she got up and I'm like, oh right, it's a Marvel movie. No one ever dies in these. And then she starts stumbling over and she's like, it's okay, I just need to catch my breath. And
when he takes his hand away and it's like completely bloody, you know.
I'm like, oh okay. Shit. And also like seeing what follows after the fact with the SWAT cars coming up and like Happy getting arrested and everything.
Telling him to run.
Yeah, it's just so like this is like probably the most like tragic that we've ever seen like Tom Holland Spider-Man in, and it also leads to one of the best scenes in the movie when because early on Doctor Strange creates this like box that is kind of like an emergency off switch or something to send all the villains home, and they get into like a fight in the mirror dimension, which is so well done. The visual effects in that sequence are amazing.
Okay, the line was awesome too. You know, it's better than magic, math. I don't agree with that. I hate math, but that line was amazing.
Yeah. But yeah, he hands off the box to MJ and Ned and says like, if anything goes wrong, if you don't hear from me, press the button. After a while, they're like, maybe we should press it, and they're like, oh, I just wish we could see him. And Ned, who is also who also has access to Strange's sling ring, opens up a portal, and at first, it's one of I had one of those moments that where like, you know, you go into a movie, you expect something to happen, and then you go into the movie just kind of waiting for it to happen, but then you're so invested by what's going on that you forget about what you were expecting. When he opens the portal and the figure turns around with the shape of the body and like the shape of the eyes, I thought it was going to be Miles. I thought it was going to be Miles Morales from Into the Spider-Verse, but as soon as he started running forward and like jumps through and he takes off his mask, I'm like, holy shit, it's Andrew Garfield. So then after that, where they're throwing the rolls at him, another great line where like, we'll just open up another portal until we find the real Peter Parker. Andrew's like, ouch. So he opens up another one, and of course Tobey Maguire comes through as the world's greatest youth pastor.
That was the best.
And say what you will about those two actors, say what you will about their portrayal of Spider-Man, God, it's so good to see them sharing the screen. Like, it's so cool to see them back. They both clearly like cared about what they were doing. They could have easily come back and like phoned in a performance, but like they really were giving it their all. And I could just watch like 3 hours of them, of Toby, Andrew, and Tom just talking to each other, and it would still be like one of the best movies of all time. What did you think when you saw them like all together?
No, I was a little underwhelmed by that, only because I hadn't seen those, you know, the Andrew Garfield movies. So when he took off his, you know, the suit and it was him, I was like, okay,
right.
But that whole scene where she's like crawling the ceiling, you know, I mean, that was hilarious. And she starts throwing the rolls. Like, just, you know, they didn't believe that he was actually, you know, Peter Parker. You know, on the second viewing was, for me, was better, like, in that aspect, because I got used to, like, him as Spider-Man. You know what I mean? Like, right. But it was awesome. And I think my favorite part was, with the three of them interacting was, you know, the web. You know,
yeah.
When he gets his web cartridges and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man just shoots it out, and you know, both Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland's characters are like, "How do you do that?"
Right.
And and they have web envy, And I just...
Does it come out of your wrist or does it come out of everywhere?
Other places.
I don't...
That was like... I think their best... like comic interaction, because there were some other interactions between them that, you know, obviously were better, and but comic wise, that was the best. Like, that little banter between the three of them was hilarious.
The three of them do have really solid chemistry. They've got a lot of great like comedic moments with each other. Like just something about seeing Garfield cracking Maguire's back is just, there's just something so beautiful about that. And when they're talking about like the different villains they fought, they're like, oh no way, you fought an alien too? And Garfield's like, oh, you guys, I'm lame in comparison to you guys. I fought a guy in a rhinoceros costume. There's, on top of just like the really solid chemistry and the great like comedic moments, there's also some great like development, because it's clear, you know, it's not like just the same versions from the movies. It's like there's actually some development to them. Like, on top of this being a really solid ending to the like Homecoming trilogy, this also could kind of act as like Amazing Spider-Man 2.1 or something, or 2.5. It's all like hinted at, but Garfield Spider-Man does get a lot like of not just like character progression, but also like closure, because like he's still you know, he's still like haunted by the death of Gwen Stacy, because he wasn't able to save her at the end of Amazing Spider-Man 2.
He is able to save MJ in this movie.
Yeah, that moment was fantastic when he starts crying and asking her if she's okay, and then MJ asks if he's okay. That was just like fucking chef's kiss. That was amazing. But like the way he's talking about like, oh, I got angry and bitter and I stopped pulling my punches and I just don't want you to end up like me. I'm like, after this movie came out, like people were talking on Twitter about how much they wanted to see Amazing Spider-Man 3 now, and I kind of agree. I never thought I would say this a few years ago, but I would like to see Andrew kind of finish his trilogy. What did you think? I mean, I know you didn't like it. I'm sure that probably would have meant more to you if you had seen the other movies. But probably, like, what did you think of it?
I mean, because he gave that little, you got that little backstory, you know, in his scenes in this movie, it did hit, you know, that moment with MJ like really did, the emphasis on that was, you could tell that was an important moment.
Right.
Even, you know, even for somebody like me who didn't see the other movies, I understood, like, that was something big, that he was able to save her when he couldn't save his own, like, MJ. Like, he refers to her, my own MJ.
Right, yeah.
So I was disappointed that, you know, they didn't bring Miles into this movie, but it does definitely leave it open for, you know, future live-action multiverse movies. I think that, I'm hoping that that's where this is headed.
I mean, they did reference it when Electro's like, oh, I saw you...
expecting a black Spider-Man.
Yeah, I saw you swinging around Queens helping all the poor people. I just thought you'd be black. Like...
Okay, I'm from Queens, so, you know, it's...
But yeah, I'm sure that's... I mean, they've already said that they want to bring Miles in at some point. And I mean, we've got Across the Spider-Verse come in next year. So I'm sure that's, you know, that's got to be the next step.
Okay, if they don't bring Spider-Pig, then I'm just not watching.
They managed to get all. They managed to do all of it. Doctor Strange comes back and he's ready to send all of them home. He's like, I've been hanging over the Grand Canyon for 12 hours. And then, of course, Goblin comes back and releases the spell, and we get that really brutal final fight between Tom's Peter and the Goblin, where I genuinely thought like he was gonna kill this guy.
Yeah, I did too.
Because like he is filled with just so much like rage and anger, like. But of course, Maguire steps in and blocks the glider, which I actually read later on was a callback to the original Spider-Man, because you know, in that one, Peter jumps out of the way of the glider and Norman impales himself, so it's like kind of adding closure to that. Like, I wasn't able to save Norman then, but I can now. But then, of course, the spell gets loose, and we see, like, people from other universes starting to come through. There are a lot of, like, figures, like, in the sky that you can only notice after seeing it multiple times. Like, I saw Kraven, I saw Rhino, and I saw Scorpion. And I'm sure there's other ones in there, but I couldn't catch all of them.
I wouldn't have recognized any of that anyway, but I wasn't really paying attention to the sky that much. I was, busy watching Doctor Strange.
Peter decides to do something really, like, bold.
And selfless, really.
Yeah. This is the moment where, like, he kind of properly becomes Spider-Man, and not just like because people have made the joke about, oh, he's just like Tony Stark Jr. because he's had all of his stuff like handed to him, and he's an Avenger and everything. But this is the moment where he actually sort of becomes Spider-Man. Like, he goes to Doctor Strange and he's like, well, okay, this spell won't work, but try doing a new spell, but just make it so that everyone forgets who Peter Parker is. And they're like, but then all your loved ones will forget you and everything. And he's like, I know, just do it. That's the only way it'll work. And so he says his goodbyes to everyone. He says goodbye to Toby and Andrew, and that there's that great picture that's been floating around the internet of just the three of them hugging, and it's so like it's so sweet, but it's also so symbolic of like 3 generations of Spider-Man and Spider-Man fans coming together. And then he has his emotional goodbye with Ned and MJ when they do that final handshake. I'm like, oh God, my heart. And then when he does finally go a little later on to talk to the two of them and explain himself, he changes his mind. He doesn't tell them what's been going on.
I think he still wants to tell them until he sees the bandage on her head and realizes the pain that he has the ability to cause.
Right.
And I think seeing the Band-Aid on her head is what like reels him in and keeps him from pursuing that.
Yeah.
And just kind of letting them get on with their lives.
And I mean, like, this is a superhero movie. I'm more than willing to bet that at some point Ned and MJ will come back, especially because, you don't put Zendaya in a movie and not have her in every single installment. But like, in that one moment, like him finally taking, as Aunt May and Uncle Ben and everyone told him, taking responsibility, and, distancing himself from them because he doesn't want them to get hurt any more than they already have. I thought that was really powerful, and I do kind of like that it ends off on him, in a similar to the Maguire films, in a really shitty apartment, with the guys like, oh, rent's due first of the month, don't be late, and his own homemade suit swinging off into the night and everything. I thought that was probably the only way that you could end the movie. What did you think of how that was played out?
I like the ending. I do think, though, there did seem to be like a little bit of recognition, though, when he says that, the line about being disappointed.
Right.
It almost looked like, there was like that click, like, I know you, but I don't know you kind of moment. And so I think what she says to him before she forgets who he is about, if you don't come and find me, I'll figure it out.
Right.
I did before. I can see I can see that happening.
Right. Yeah. We do have 2 post-credit scenes. One is Tom Hardy's Venom sitting in a bar in Mexico having the entire MCU explained to him.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah, and although it makes me laugh because it means that Venom 2 is even more pointless than it already was. Because like that was a thing when that initial post-credit scene of like, oh, Tom Hardy getting like blasted to another universe, and seeing Tom Holland, you're like, oh shit, he's in the MCU now, but that means that all the other events that happened in the other two movies are just completely pointless. And then he gets blipped back to his own universe in like 5 minutes, and he's like, well, what was even the point of that? But there is a little dollop of symbiote still left in the MCU, so I'm sure Venom will make his way to New York and find Peter Parker at some point. And then at the very end, we get a teaser trailer for Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, which looks fantastic.
I'm actually looking forward to that because, like I said, although I didn't particularly care for the first Doctor Strange movie, I really like his character in this particular movie, and I'm curious to see where it goes.
Especially now that you've got Wanda in it. And
that teaser trailer just made me want to see it all the more.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty excited for that.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think we've pretty much talked about the entire movie. Any other final thoughts?
Go see it. Several times.
Yeah, I really, if I said anything else, I'd be repeating myself. This was easily like top 10 MCU movies for me. One of the best Spider-Man movies that's been made. It's emotional, it's funny, it's action-packed.
It's amazing.
No, it's okay. I just needed to hear that. What would you give it out of 5?
I would say 5 out of 5 for sure. Just because it was just incredible, amazing. Yeah, can't say that enough.
I'm sat between a 4.5 and a 5. Like there are some I could nitpick the shit out of this movie till all the live long day, but like the good elements are so good that it doesn't even seem worth it. Like this is clearly a movie that was made for fans, and I think they nailed everything that they could, and it was just one of the best viewing experiences that I've had. So like I said, 4.5 or a 5. So thank you, Mom, for joining me. I'm glad you had fun at the movie.
I did.
Till next time, be sure to like, subscribe, ring the notification bell so you can stay up to date on when I'm posting. Follow me on all my social media, subscribe to my main channel. Everything you need to know will be in the description. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you later.
3, that's a magic number. Yes, it is. It's the magic number. Somewhere.